Maracanazo happened in the 1950 World Cup when Uruguay defeated Brazil in Rio de Janeiro. Brazil only needed to avoid defeat to become world champion, and the match was played inside the Maracanã in front of a huge home crowd. The country was ready to celebrate before the game had even finished, but Uruguay came back and won 2-1, turning the stadium silent. What makes this moment iconic is not only the result but the shock around it. It became a national wound in Brazilian football history. It mattered because it showed that the World Cup can leave a memory that lasts for generations. Pelé arrives. Pelé arrives happened at the 1958 World Cup in Sweden. He was only 17 years old, but he played with a calmness and talent that made him look far beyond his age. He scored in the quarterfinal, scored a hat-trick in the semifinal, and then scored twice in the final against Sweden. Brazil won their first World Cup, and Pelé became a global star almost overnight. What makes this moment different is that the world discovered one of football's greatest players while he was still a teenager. It mattered because it changed the image of Brazilian football forever. The save of the century. The save of the century happened in the 1970 World Cup when Gordon Banks stopped Pelé's header. Brazil attacked from the right, the cross came in, and Pelé headed the ball down towards the corner. It looked certain to be a goal. Banks somehow dived across and pushed it over the bar. Even Pelé thought he had scored. What makes this moment iconic is that it was not a goal, but it is remembered like one. It mattered because it showed that goalkeepers could create legendary World Cup moments too. Carlos Alberto's goal. Carlos Alberto's goal came in the 1970 World Cup final between Brazil and Italy. Brazil moved the ball across the pitch with calm, patient passing before Pelé laid it off to Carlos Alberto. He ran onto it and struck the ball into the net with power. The goal is remembered because it looked like the whole team had built it together. It was not only about one player, it was about rhythm, timing, and collective beauty. This moment mattered because it captured the greatness of Brazil's 1970 team in one perfect move. The Hand of God. The Hand of God happened in the 1986 World Cup quarter-final between Argentina and England. Diego Maradona jumped with goalkeeper Peter Shilton and used his hand to push the ball into the net. The referee allowed the goal, even though England's players protested. The moment became even bigger because the match already carried tension between the two countries. What makes this moment iconic is the mix of controversy, history, and personality around it. It mattered because it became one of the most talked about goals ever scored at a World Cup. Goal of the century. Goal of the century happened in the same 1986 match between Argentina and England. Just minutes after the Hand of God, Maradona picked up the ball inside his own half and dribbled past several England players before rounding the goalkeeper and scoring. It was the opposite of the first goal. This one was pure control, balance, and genius. What makes it different is that it felt impossible while it was happening. It mattered because it gave football one of its greatest individual goals and helped define Maradona's legend forever. Baggio's penalty miss. Baggio's penalty miss happened in the 1994 World Cup final between Brazil and Italy. The match went to penalties after a tense goalless draw. Roberto Baggio, Italy's biggest star, stepped up needing to keep his team alive. He sent the ball over the bar, and Brazil became world champion. What makes this moment painful is that Baggio had carried Italy through much of the tournament. One miss became the image people remembered most. It mattered because it showed the loneliness of a penalty shootout, where even a great player can be defined by one kick. Zidane's headbutt. Zidane's headbutt happened in the 2006 World Cup final between France and Italy. Zinedine Zidane was playing the final match of his career, and he had already scored a calm penalty earlier in the game. But in extra time, after an exchange with Marco Materazzi, Zidane turned and headbutted him in the chest. He was sent off, and France later lost on penalties. What makes this moment iconic is the contrast. One of football's most elegant players ended his career with a sudden act of anger. It mattered because one moment changed the final image of a legendary career. Germany 7-1 Brazil. Germany 7-1 Brazil happened in the 2014 World Cup semifinal. Brazil were playing at home, carrying the pressure of an entire country, but Germany tore the match apart in the first half. Goal after goal came so quickly that the stadium felt stunned. Brazil lost 7-1, one of the most shocking results in World Cup history. What makes this moment different is the scale of the collapse. It was not just a defeat. It was a public sporting disaster for the most famous football nation in the world. It mattered because it became a permanent symbol of pressure, tactics, and heartbreak. Messi lifts the World Cup. Messi lifts the World Cup happened in 2022 when Argentina beat France in one of the greatest finals ever played. Lionel Messi had already won nearly everything in football, but the World Cup was the missing piece. He scored in the final, scored again in extra time, and then Argentina survived the penalty shootout. When he finally lifted the trophy, it felt like the closing chapter of a long football story. What makes this moment different is the weight behind it. It mattered because it completed the legacy of one of football's greatest players.